Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Crime and Entertainment. I have here a very special guest. I guess I would describe this as she's one of the key factors in the Dirty John podcast and Dirty John series that you see on Netflix. Please welcome to the show, Terra Newell. Terra, how are you?
Good. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you. And, we were kind of talking off air, and I was saying, and I'm sure you know because you have your own podcast that we'll get into here, before we get out of here. But when you have your own podcast, you spend so much time engulfed with that and the guests you're having on, it's harder to discover new shows. You're not just a listener anymore, you're on the playing field, so to speak. And, I had a show I done with your co host, Collier Landry, and I started looking into your story, and then I went and found the Dirty John podcast. And man, I burned through it. I'm now in the midst of watching the Netflix series. My time is very limited, but I'm plugging away at it. And I was just blown away at the whole story in general, and then obviously the events that happened with yourself. And I just said, man, I've got to get her on and hear things, straight from the horse's mouth, so to speak, because I do know podcast and really high production things like this can change facts just a wee bit. We've had a lot of people on of, movies that have been made about them and some of the things they did. And, they was like, yeah, I didn't even sign off on any of that. They just ran with it. So
Oh
I
yeah.
actually have the person on who happened to and get, their versions of it. And I'm super glad you could come on. I really am.
I love that you said that as well. And thank you so much for having me because that is the point of our show as well, the Survivor Squad, is just because there are so many things that get convoluted in the media and they have to change a certain level of factoring when they put a TV show out there. I also worked a little bit in the entertainment industry before my show even came out. So I knew that they had that, and I had those expectations already that things were going to be changed.
Right.
I just didn't know how real it would be.
And even outside of entertainment, papers don't always print everything. You get some of the highlights, but you don't get a lot of the in-depth details of to why something happened. They'll give you what happened, but as far as to why and what led up to it, a lot of times those are left out of the papers. So, again, good to get the person on that was actually involved, in the situation. I guess we'll kind of start out. Tell us a little bit about, early life, where you grew up, what home life was like, and then we'll kind of progress from there.
Okay, so I grew up in Orange County, California, a pretty like conservative area, but still liberal in a sense, like kind of in the middle, but just leaning more on the conservative side. Just traditional houses. I say it was pretty quiet. I lived in mostly well, like I was born in Orange Park Acres, which was these houses that were just these humongous mansions with horses and everything. My dad and mom lost that house, and then we moved into a couple other houses in Tustin. And it was actually kind of funny. I remember calling my old house the Tiger Woods house because Tiger Woods actually bought it for his parents. So the houses were pretty nice growing up, for instance. And I just remember growing up, my parents fought a little bit. They just didn't know how to get along. I don't think that they were meant to be together. Let's just say that. There wasn't really anything that was going on that was too crazy in like abuse aspect or anything. They were just toxic for each other.
Right.
And so my mom and my dad split around the age of 7. Around that time, I actually had a lot of childhood trauma, but I don't think they were aware of it because my family friend would come into my house at night and actually molest me as a kid and stuff. And so that was scary. And there was a part in the podcast where I even talked about this person coming into my room when I was little. I have more clarity on that now because I've did my EMDR sessions and everything, and that was actually a family friend. So and I wasn't believed from my parents when that happened too, but
Oh, so
now
you did tell them?
Oh yeah. Well, I didn't tell them that I was being touched or anything, because when you are a child and that's all that you know, and your abuser is doing that, and they're doing it also right in front of people, and people are not really aware that certain things may not be noticeable,
Right.
say like their hand placement or something. And so you also want to trust the people that are close to your family and around your family. And so when that happens, a lot of the times no one really knows until it's years later. You have flashbacks. Oh, this happened, because you're also trained as a little kid to think that it's normalized. So you're not going to say something.
Yeah. And so you said that, but when you did tell them that they didn't really, buy into it, they just kind of brushed it off.
Well, I told them that a guy came into my room at night because I woke up and screamed, and he picked me up and then I dropped. And my sister actually screamed and I screamed too, but my sister was in the same bedroom as me. So they came running into my room. They thought I was just having a nightmare, because children of trauma have a lot of nightmares. And, it's not like when you see a scary movie and that just triggers your kid. It's like these repetitive nightmares that happen as a child. And then you also, a lot of the times, kids will see images or make up visions that they see.
Mhm.
So I'm not sure if I saw a lot of ghosts as a kid or if it was my trauma, but something happened.
I really believe that kids have the ability to see things. Like you watch some of these movies like the Insidiouses and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think kids have a window to a world that maybe adults don't have. I'm not saying all of it's bad and evil either, but I think just kids have the ability to experience more on the, supernatural side of things than, regular adults for whatever reason that may be. So I totally get where you're coming from. Sure.
Yeah.
How
Thank
many
you.
siblings did you have?
So I have 3 sisters, 1 brother.
Okay. So a pretty big family.
Yes, and then my parents also took in my 2 cousins sometimes too, because my mom's sister was murdered by her husband.
Right. Yeah. And I'd heard about that in the podcast too. And that's one thing that your mom, since that happened, was very against guns, correct?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, she did not like guns, but my dad had a lot of guns, so it was,
Yeah. Another
you
reason
know.
why they probably didn't get along too well.
Yeah, like, I grew up with guns, I'm fine with guns, but I also understand that if I have a gun, I have to be in a great mental place, and I have to know the rules and everything about gun safety.
Right. Yeah, and that's important. I mean, I'm all for the Second Amendment Second Amendment and people having guns and choosing to bear arms, but at the same time, I think gun knowledge, gun safety, gun training is also paramount. Anybody. It's kind of like that old saying: anybody can get somebody pregnant, but only certain people can be mothers, certain people can be fathers. You have to learn how to do that. You have to learn how to handle guns, and it's not something you just want to go out and just start using all willy nilly.
Oh, yeah. No, I remember borrowing a gun when John was well, when I was scared of John, but my mom was still with him. And I remember borrowing the gun from my neighbor. The neighbor showing me how to like use it, and just in showing me how to use it, I like got my finger stuck in the clip. I
Oh,
don't know how that happens. So I would prefer a revolver over other stuff.
right.
But, I and then it was funny too, because I remember that I was working on set, and my friend, her fiance that was like a famous baseball player, Jose Canseco, he shot off his like fingertip or something
Ah,
like that way or something.
I watched Jose.
Uh,
I was a kid, man. Jose Canseco. Yeah.
oh yeah, no, he signed a baseball for my boyfriend at the time, and he was really nice.
Oh yeah, he's a super cool guy. All right.
Yeah.
Um.
Well,
So when
yeah.
that's kind of happening. Your mom and dad, I'm assuming, did eventually split.
Yes.
Okay, and then your mom actually meets this guy. What was it, on a dating app?
Well, had a few relationships in between, we'll just say that.
Right.
And a lot of toxic men or men that were narcissists, or because she's an empath. So she kind of gives too much in the
Right.
beginning and then attracts these people, and then she's really worked on it now. She's with a great guy now, just got to say that. But she was going through her healing journey,
Right.
and so I really got to know a lot of interesting men in a sense.
Okay. Um,
And yeah, and then she met him.
okay. So I mean, at least from the start of the TV show, it just looks like she was really wanting to find just someone to hang out with and, a companion, if you would. Maybe not necessarily looking for long term, but just someone to kind of share their life with. And I mean, and I can see where when people, are looking for that, what age was she when she met John?
I think she was in her late 50s.
Right. So at that point, I can see where people are just looking for someone to have fun with and hang out. She's obviously, been a hardworking lady up until this point. She had, owned a business. And, I can see where they just want to find someone. And sometimes you trust a little bit too quick and give a little bit too quick. What was the pretenses that she met John under? Because I know he told a great deal of lies. I want to say he said he was a doctor, and that turned out to be untrue. What was the pretenses of the meeting between John and what was his last name?
Meehan.
Meehan, that's right. Yeah, John Meehan and your mom.
So they met on the dating website and then they went on their first date together. They walked back to her place and he got on her bed. My mom is actually not thinking that, like, oh, stuff is going to go down. Me inviting him out to my place, like, that's going to mean something,
Right.
where guys might assume that, but she's just not. And so she establishes her boundaries. She says that I'm uncomfortable with you being on my bed, please get off it, basically. And he gets all pissed and he actually storms out.
Right. And I've seen that was on episode 1 of the TV show. Did you meet him like this first day that he came over there to meet your mom? Was you there? Or that was something that was kind of fabricated for television.
That was my sister.
Oh, okay. Okay, that was your
Yes.
sister in there. All right. Yeah. So see, I hadn't gotten that for you.
Yes, my sister was scoping him out. My sister is also 15 months older than me, so we're very close in age. I was living in Vegas too, so I had that distance.
Okay.
Yeah, and my sister was very involved in my mom's life. Probably told my mom what to do all the time, and my mom probably listened to her a bit too much. And so when this guy came in, my sister also could see that he was kind of just lurking.
Right.
He seemed to be like, my sister and I, like, we were interesting kids, we'll say. We were just like a little rascals. We like sold jeans sometimes, like True Religion jeans. I mean, I sold pot sometimes. I also went to church too, but like,
As long
so
as you're not selling the pot in church, I guess that's
yes, yeah. But we saw people that had grifts.
right. And when you do that, you can spot it, you have an eye.
Oh yeah. And when this guy came in, like, the guy that I dated for like 10 years, like, I sold fake acid with him at a rave one time. So like, and in my mind, I was like, well, I'm not selling real drugs. So
Yeah.
I'm not going to hurt people, but it's still a scam and it's still bad. And I only did it because I was in this relationship with him and I wanted to appease to him. And so I understood when John came around, like, oh, this is the dynamic. I mean, my mom's not doing the grift with him,
Right.
but my mom's enabling him in the sense of like supporting him financially or doting on him and not really recognizing these red flags or boundaries that she needs to put up.
Right. And I found it interesting, and I get this doesn't really jump in the head because you find out in the podcast. But when he was laying on that bed, she emphasized that he kept going on and on about how comfortable it was. Reason being is he hadn't been long got out of prison. And so
Oh yeah.
if anybody has done any stretch of time, even if it's an overnighter, anywhere you lay down in prison is not very comfortable, and probably nowhere near as comfortable as that bed was.
Yeah, no, I only went to, I don't know if it wasn't like prison. It was like
County jail.
probably like just for an MIP
Yeah.
of 0.02. So, yeah, and I just couldn't bail myself out, and that's why I was there longer than I wanted to be. So,
County jail.
yeah. Yeah.
It's still not a good place to sleep either.
Yeah, but nothing was comfortable. Like you're just everything is solid and like rectangular.
Round, yeah.
Yeah.
Cold as hell.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So, nah.
When was your
Definitely.
first time meeting John?
My first time meeting John was 2 months into the relationship when they were moving into a house on Balboa Island in Newport Beach. So they were my mom was moving from a penthouse in Irvine to like on the water, and that was a bit more expensive as well. But she wanted to have space for my sister because my sister was just like, screw this guy, like something's up. Like I think she also like got a vibe that he was checking her out or something. Like my sister's very attractive, and like she just was feeling his vibe and just like, okay, like I don't like him. So
the creep radar was going off for sure.
Oh yeah. So my mom moved because she was having issues with that.
Okay. So it sounds like was he a smooth talker? I mean, like, I know you can't necessarily hide actions, but words can mask a lot of stuff. You can smooth people over with your words. Was he a smooth talker in that sense? Or do you think it was just your mom and the point she was at in her life, she overlooked things that maybe with a different time frame or different set of eyes, she would have seen differently?
He was such a smooth talker to who he wanted to be a smooth talker to.
Right.
To me, to my sister, his point was to isolate us.
Yeah.
And so he didn't have like our conversations, my conversation with him. The only conversation he was super down to have was about my medical history and stuff, which I was actually having stomach ulcers. I didn't know I was having stomach ulcers, but he told me that I was having ovarian cysts, and he was very informative about it. He knew a lot about it. He told me where to go, what to do, exactly what they would do. He just wasn't right about that diagnosis, but he loved talking about medical history. But whenever I tried to ask him questions about himself, they would be a close-ended answer. Like you would ask him, like, how do you like the sun? It's good. Okay, like, and you would have to ask him more questions to get him to elaborate. It's like, I hate to say this, but like, when you have on a nervous guest and there's so much trauma in their story and they're not used to it, it's maybe their first time, it's like pulling that out from them.
Yeah, you have to do it with, in our cases, sometimes we have to do it with kid gloves. You especially, because your podcast is solely about people that, have survived these types of things. Sometimes I get guests that's a little bit more freely to talk about whatever, because they might be from the entertainment industry. So you get light here and there. But yeah, I know exactly what you're saying, especially like you said, if it's their first time, you want to handle it with, the utmost care and respect, because you don't know how they're going to react for telling it.
Right. It's like I was trying to do that with that situation, but that person didn't want to give.
Right.
And that person didn't want to share their trauma. And that person only wanted to get rid of me. Where, that person that we have on is nervous and they're going through it. Like, so I want people to know that sometimes nervousness can get mistaken as this antisocial, with being like autistic or something can get mistaken with this, but you have to see their intentions. Like, do they really want to get to know you, or are they just nervous?
Yeah, just apprehensive about, having that conversation. And it sounds like to me, he was trying to pull, you guys away from your mom to get your mom solely dependent on his attention, just on his feelings, his part of the relationship, and kind of just create a disconnect, which was, it sounds like it was pretty hard because you guys, sound like a pretty close knit group.
Oh, yes, and my sister and I were always buzzing in my mom's ear, always telling her what she needed to do. There was not many boundaries, and I mean, we needed to work on our boundaries with each other. We
Right.
have now, but, like, he was using the things that we needed to do against us.
Right. Yeah, and that's what narcissists do, man. They eliminate the things you care about and the things that you enjoy in your life just to have you solely dependent on them, and then that's where they kind of start to take control.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
at what point did you guys really start to piece together that there was probably something a little bit more? I don't want to say the word sinister, but shady, I guess, going on because you said he would show up. He's supposedly a doctor and he would never show up in like a nice car. He would never show up in nice clothes. Like he didn't dress the way your average doctor looked, which I've learned not to judge people by how they dress, but there's just still certain ways people carry themselves when they're of a certain job, even if they don't dress the part. There's just certain ways they're carrying herself. When did you guys start to really poke holes in his story and eventually come to the point to where you needed to hire a PI?
Right away, in a sense. Right when I met him, there was the first week was like, okay, that's fine. Then I went back another week, a couple days before Thanksgiving. And that's when I was like, okay, he's using her car. He's moving in here. His stuff is in the closet and it was just open. Like his nursing certificate was just on top. It was wide open for me to see. It was in the guest room. I was trying to put my stuff away so that it was out of the way. And that was actually a red flag, but I was too naive to even get that it was a red flag. And so I started asking about his car, like, where's his cars? And my mom was like, he has like three cars. It was like either two or three cars. He has a motorcycle. All of it got stolen. And I'm like, huh, that's interesting. Like, you think insurance would give him something or like a rental car or something to get around.
All of them got stolen.
Uh huh.
Some bad luck around part of town he's living at.
Well, and then it was funny because he also said he had an apartment in Cathedral City, which he had a RV in Cathedral City.
Yeah. I guess
And
that could be
yeah,
considered an apartment. So maybe that, the one lie, one truth he told out of everything.
yeah, but it was just, and then he would always like drive down to come down here. And then he would stay here, or he would sleep in his car, I think sometimes, or I don't know. I definitely knew he slept in his car when he was stalking me and my family.
Right.
I don't know if he was doing it when he came down here or if he just went straight right back up to Cathedral City, or, maybe he was another one of those guys because I knew so many guys that would literally like hit up girls on the app just so that they would have a place to stay,
Right.
you know?
What did your mom ever ask, like, let's go to your place? Was that never something that came up, or was she just kind of more comfortable at her own place?
My mom is always comfortable at her own place. Everything's nicer, everything is just put together. I mean, her guy now is such a great guy, but I think they stayed majority like at her place because his place was nice too, but I don't think it was to her standard,
Right.
which is funny because it's like the same exact apartment. It's just probably not decorated right.
So, really, in a sense, she's just comfortable in her home before she would be going somewhere else. So it really worked out in his benefit to that regard.
Yeah, and my mom is like a boss lady. My mom is like she has it together. She has lots of money. Like she likes things a certain way. She has a high standard. My mom would not be caught like camping.
Right.
She's a bit more diva.
Uh, Um, so did you tell your mom that you were going to hire a PI to kind of follow him and check his story? Because you guys were having suspicions about it. You know, he's supposed to be a surgeon, but yet he's never really going to work. He's just hanging out all the time. I don't know how much a surgeon's really going to be just laying around the house for, days on end. You told her that and she was okay with it?
So we did not. I actually had a falling out with him.
Okay.
And it was the day before Thanksgiving. He confronted me about snooping around, which I was not snooping around. I was just finding stuff in the house because I was in my mom's house.
About to say, you're in your mom's house. Your shit's in here. That's not snooping around. You're
Right? And I like go to get a Q-tip and then I see his stuff in there. And then I text my mom, like, why is his stuff in here? Like, you said he wasn't moving in. And I think that's really what started it. And then her hairdresser also was like he seemed off, like he seemed weird because she cut his hair and that hairdresser cuts all of our hair. So she was giving us the lowdown too. And then he was at the hospital that day for his arm hurting. And I'm like, oh, he's a drug addict.
Yeah.
Because he's going to get his fix for his arm hurting. That's interesting.
Yep. That's people will doctor hop and doctor shop and, try to feed those habits that way. So
Oh, yeah.
who actually hired the PI? Was it you?
My sister, and then I have three sisters.
Right.
It was my sister Nicole and her husband, and then also my sister Jacquelyn got involved as well. And then they called me up, told me that they were hiring the private investigator. And this was actually after I stopped talking to my mom because I had a fight with her and John. And so I was just very pleased and happy, and there was like a sense of relief.
Okay. Now, when y'all brought back, a lot of the proof that was, basically laying it out there in black and white that he wasn't who he said he was. There was a lot of things that was not on the up and up. What was her initial reaction? And then what was the response?
I honestly wasn't there for that part. I heard that they brought it to her attention. She was shocked. Then she had to figure out how to like get rid of him or whatever. And she had to lease out the apartment. My dad actually helped her lease out the apartment to one of his friends. She moved everything out. And during that time, I have no idea what John was doing, but my mom was living with my sister Nicole in Ladera, and just living in my nephew's room. And then John was able to get a hold of my mom, convince her that all these other John Meehans were not him. And he also took her to a lawyer that explained this as well. And so she ended up going back together with him.
Was this lawyer just a friend that was kind of covering the story?
I'm not sure because he had a lot of lawyers in his pocket to just like sue so many other people, because he would also threaten the lawyers and get them disbarred. And he was very
So he wouldn't have to pay the
successful.
legal bill.
Oh, yeah, but he was successful in doing that. And so I think he may have threatened, I'm just assuming here. I
Right.
think he may have threatened that lawyer, and then that lawyer was like, oh shit, okay, I'm gonna work with this guy.
Right. And they said that he would do little scams like that, as far as like, go outside of a bar, wait for people to pull out, slam on the brakes, get hit in the rear end. So then, 9 times out of 10, if you're leaving a bar at 2 a.m., you probably had a drink or two, then that would be okay. He would do all these little short cons, I guess you could call them, to, get paydays and whatnot.
Yeah, I don't remember that story per se, but I think it probably is true. I remember the one where he ate glass and
Yeah.
that's true actually. He would show up at he would go into hospitals dressed as a doctor, just walk into patients' rooms, pretend that he was their anesthesiologist. And that's how he met this one lady, created a relationship with her, and it was the Brazilian one actually in the show and then in the series. And literally, she almost sent him, I think it was like $31 million or something like that, until one of her friends was like, why are you sending someone 30 something $million when you don't even, like, when you barely even know them? Like, you could never get this money back. And then he freaked out on her, started terrorizing her, and then she had to move to Brazil, back to Brazil.
The thought of like what you have to do and say to somebody to get them to the point to where they're willing to give you or entrust you with $31 million.
Right?
Like, I
I'm like,
don't even know if I would entrust that much money to people that I do know and love and care about, let alone somebody that I barely fucking know.
yeah, well, he took her in at this vulnerable, or he got in at this vulnerable state.
Right. And that
Well,
could be a part
yeah.
of it too. They're looking at like, there's a phrase for it or whatever. You come into that vulnerable state and they just kind of they cling to you. You're their shining light, I guess you could say. There's a phrase for it. I can't think of it right now, but yeah, I can see where that would play a part in it.
Yeah. Well, it's like misery loves company, but unfortunately, they're the predator, and then you're the prey that's going through your miserable time of, you getting your brain surgery and then coming through the recovery. And I can't even imagine what the recovery is for that, because you have to build your brain back and you have to function back to normal.
And I want to throw something in the middle here because you find out in the podcast that, this obviously, like you said, with this woman, he had a previous, I don't know if that was a wife, but he had kids. So he had the kids while he was seeing your mom, correct?
So he didn't have any interaction with those kids.
Right. Yeah. That's what I didn't hear anything about that in kind of till later. So I figured he probably had just cut off all communication with him while he was talking to your mom because I figured she didn't even know.
Oh, yeah. No, Emily and Abigail also, I believe they didn't want anything to do with them. I'm still cool with them. Actually, Emily is pregnant now and is having a baby. But it's been really weird too, because we found out that he's also had more kids.
Oh, wow.
Like, Tanya has an Audible, and she did her Audible, and I actually found out at the end of the Audible. I'm like, wait, John has another guy and no one thought to tell me this? Okay. So I'm gonna have to just process it, because there's so many horror movies out there where, like, the prodigy comes after the other survivor,
Oh, yeah.
like Scream, all those movies.
Yeah, even mob movies like A Bronx Tale, the people that you done wrong come back to get you, and that's kind of a tie-in here with this because we've actually had a lot of mob guys on the show. He claimed when it came to the point to where he would start to threaten people, he claimed that his family was associated with people that was in the mob. Which if there
The
was any truth to that, that can scare the shit out of somebody.
the Anastasia family.
Yeah, Albert Anastasia. Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
he was head of Murder Inc. And
Oh, yeah.
just had a guy on. I'm not sure these movies might have been. I don't know if you would have watched these, but like one of the earlier Superman movies, the guy that played Non,
Okay.
the real distinctive looking guy. If you see him, his name is Jack O'Halloran. He said that Albert Anastasia is his father.
Oh.
So if that be the case, he might could have some lineage to this guy. If was this confirmed that John was actually did have lineage to the Anastasia family?
So Christopher Gothard, the narrator for the LA Times articles, and the journalist for the LA Times articles, he did a lot of research and he couldn't find a connection.
Hmm.
It doesn't say it's not 100% true, because I'm like, there's still stuff in my chart that I'm like certain people don't pop up, like Don Johnson is supposedly like my second cousin or something, and I'm like, I don't know, to be honest. I
Uh,
can't claim that.
yeah.
So, I just don't know, but his sisters and his dad taught him that mafia mentality, and he also, like, as a kid would clean like the ashes out of the ashtrays at a casino. So when the casino is involved, maybe that also, maybe they might say they are, or maybe they might claim that just for that,
Was this out of Nevada, the Nevada area?
I believe it was I believe he was from Northern California.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, they have branches up there because I mean, Albert Anastasia got killed in 57. I don't
Okay.
think he had no direct like kids or anything like that. But a lot of times, what you have when there's ties to organized crime, is very strict as their mafia members are strictly Italian. Now they deal with a lot of people, that can make them money. And then a lot of times people want to claim association or whatever when they're actually no more than business partners or underlings or, something of that nature. There's been a few Jewish gangsters that's held high ranking, membership, but even those guys weren't fully made members of the mafia. But a lot of times people, if they have any sort of dealings with them at all, even if they're paying them off, to operate out of a certain area, they'll say they have ties to the mob. But that's still scary for somebody to say that. And, the threats that
Yeah.
he was making, I mean, they played some of them on that podcast. I think it was when he was talking to the woman that he had,
Tanya.
and you could just, I mean, like, he was a very menacing guy when he wanted to be. It sounds like he could be very charming and smooth and suave and sophisticated, but when he flipped that switch, I mean, you could just tell that there was a whole nother person. You're dealing with a Jekyll and Hyde type situation for sure.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, even when he attacked me, it was so creep, such a creep. He grabbed me by the waist and he said, "Do you know who I am?" Like, of course I know who you are.
Yeah. Not really. It's not like I've never seen you before here.
Right? He just wanted that cool tagline
Right.
and then to do the job. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to give that to you.
Oh, good for you. At some point here, your mom is, like I said, she learns everything that's going on. She does make the decision to go back to him. He actually gets really sick and has to go in the hospital. Or was that, what's the story with that?
Well, I mean, it's crazy because you're like, I don't know if this is true or false, but I do believe that he was getting sick to a certain point, but how was he causing that?
Right. Was he causing himself to be sick to have to stay in the hospital to get the drugs?
Yes. Was he continuing to do so many drugs where, his veins were freaking out, his organs started to fail because he's shoved so much shit in him,
Mhm.
and we're not talking about weed, or it's heavy drugs like fentanyl, cocaine, and just so many medical drugs too.
And they were
Like,
finding these, he was basically taking a lot of the stuff, obviously not the cocaine and stuff like that, but he was taking it from the hospital.
oh yeah. Yeah. And he would steal, well, he also got in trouble. That's when he thought Tanya was working against him when she actually wasn't,
Mhm.
until people contacted her and were like, okay, and that's when she needed a plan to leave. But he had complaints about him, and then he blamed Tanya for that. When you're stealing shit from a hospital, you're gonna get caught.
And during this time, your mom actually then finds out about his prison terms and a lot of things like that. I was very shocked at that point that, she's got every opportunity to get out if he's in the hospital, because by then he had and I want to encourage people to go listen to this podcast, but he had put up somewhat of a surveillance system, really high end security system, but I believe in it, this is just my take on it. It was nothing more to just monitor y'all coming in and around her.
So, well, that was in the Balboa house. That's before she left him the first time.
Right.
And then the lawyer was able to convince her. And then he's back in the picture, but she's kind of hoping for the best. She's hoping that everything that we found out will come to our conclusions that that was false. And then we'll just magically get along with him. But here's the thing. I was telling her, listen, I'm willing to have a conversation with him and work through whatever we need to work through. But he was not. And so she would have to just put boundaries up with me and my sister, where she would only go to lunches with us. She would do certain things because he had so much control on her. But because he gave her so much happiness in the beginning and made her feel so good, and still does here and there, like, she's attached to that high. And she's thinking, no one can ever treat me as good still. And so it's also creating that chemical effect in the brain where you're not knowing what to do because it's the addiction effect of it.
Right.
And so, you're dealing with like all these levels of like why am I drawing a blank right now? Like the cuddle hormone, like the
Yeah.
oxytocin. And so your body's even telling you to stay, even though this guy is threatening your family. And, because you're also done reproducing too. So like you don't need those kids. Like your body is telling you you don't need those kids.
Right.
Like your mind may be telling you you need those kids, but your body's just like, okay, you need this love instead.
And I think too, it's like when you get to be that age, you start to really dread being alone, thinking that you want to make it work with this person because you want to spend out your golden years with someone that you can share things with. And unfortunately, she just really picked the wrong guy. Like you said, gladly she's got one now that's a whole lot better. But it sounds like up until this that his plan was working exactly the way he wanted it to. He was all but able to, exile, her from you guys, and at the same time have so much control over her that even when she found out all this stuff, it was still very hard for her to disconnect.
Yeah, no, and absolutely. And we have on the podcast, I think it's coming out soon, Sarah Klein, who is a Larry Nassar survivor. And just like I could see just, you feel connected to your abuser, even though they are an abuser.
Right.
And it takes you for a while, like your brain to recognize that. But she also, he started to make comments, more comments about like threatening my sister and more rules. And then my brother didn't want his kids to see her anymore. And all the kids were not supposed to be around my mom unless she was supervised with them. And I think the breaking point for her was when she realized that he was a bad guy to us.
Mm-hmm.
And that we were not just being difficult or having issues, and that there was a continual thing going on where I don't know how many times he threatened to dump us in the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah. And like I said, coming from, him and the way his tone was in the clips that you heard on that podcast, I mean, there's some people that you can tell are just saying something to say it. But I could say there probably was some validity in some of the things that he said, or at least intentions that he would have followed up on had he had the opportunity.
Oh yeah. No, yeah, 100%. He was very evil and he knew exactly what to do. And I mean, he's had so many other victims too that it's just crazy. And then he also, when my mom eventually left him the second time, she knew how dangerous he was. And she actually hired a private investigator for herself then. And that's when we found out that he actually cut his stomach open in jail so that he could get his drug fix. And he put feces in it. Yes.
Wow. Yeah, that's a little extreme. Maybe the stomach being open was good enough to get whatever drugs you're looking for. I hope so, but Jesus Christ.
But if you stuff feces in it, then he has to be there longer and it could cause an infection. Then he has to be treated for so many more things.
Oh, geez. Yeah. I mean, yeah, but that's literally risking death right there. Cause I mean, that's exactly right. He's not bullshitting that. If that gets in there and gets in the bloodstream and infection and staph, I mean, that's literally risking your life for a high.
kind of in a sense, but he knew exactly where to cut. He knew exactly where to go because he has all that medical training. So people ruled that as a suicide attempt when he knew exactly what he was doing to himself.
Well, you referenced Scream earlier. That's kind of exactly what they were doing at the end of part one. I don't know about the rest of the 9, but the very first one, remember he told him at the end, he's like, stay to the side, don't go too deep. They already had
Yeah.
planned out where to get stabbed to do the, look the worst, cause the damage, but it be as minimal of a risk as possible. So that makes perfect sense that he knew where to, cut to do that. I bet that probably wasn't even looked at as, suspicious at the time. That's great.
Yeah, but I knew if he could do that to himself,
He
he
could
would
do.
have no problem hurting anyone else.
So she makes that second split. You're working at a dog grooming place at the time?
A dog kennel and grooming facility, yes.
Okay. How long had you been doing that?
Probably around a year mark, actually. It was going to be a little over a year since I've been working there because I started working there when I moved back from Vegas.
Mhm. And I'm assuming you have a passion for animals.
I do, but I don't really work with them too much anymore just because with my trauma, I need
Yeah.
to have as little as possible. And I love dogs, but people don't train their dogs well.
Right. What I mean, yeah, I'm assuming that maybe kind of dogs and being around animals was that's kind of a trigger to the whole event that took place.
Absolutely, because my dog was with me in my attack
Right.
and he barked to even warn me that John was there. I told my dog to knock it off. And so for me, whenever a dog barks, like my dog here is fine because I'm used to his energy. I'm used to like when he barks at certain things. He's also very well behaved, except for dogs on leashes.
Right.
He just likes to bark at dogs on leashes. We're working on it, but it's just it's been harder. And I said like people don't train their dogs, but a lot of people don't train their dogs, you
Right.
know. And I'm just like I've worked with dogs my whole life. I just need them to be very well behaved.
He actually called the grooming facility before the attack, and you didn't know it, right? I think to kind of get the gist if you were going to be working.
Yes, so he was calling to get my hours, asking when I was my hours, everything. I told him that I could get him in I believe it was 12 p.m. the next day because I was going to the Jason Aldean concert and stuff. And usually I get everyone's information, like their name, phone number, all of that stuff. But the dogs were barking because it was feeding time. And so I just needed to get him off the phone because I couldn't hear very and he faked a French accent as well.
Okay, that was my next question. I was assuming he probably changed up his voice a little bit. So with that, you unknowingly kind of gave him your work schedule. Did you know that he was kind of stalking you at this time?
I had the feeling, like I had that feeling like who's there? Like who's
Yeah.
there? And I kept looking over my shoulders. And it was so funny too at times because like I said before, there was so many instances where he could have grabbed me and actually been successful. Like I would walk alone from the bars at night.
And you believe he
I,
was probably scoping you out at certain times throughout that?
I like always would look, I would like, you know, and have that feeling. And then I found out he was stalking me on the trails because that's how he knew about the dogs to make appointments for.
Uh,
And if you would have killed me on a hiking trail, come on.
yeah.
There's so many bushes. It's so big.
Yeah. And so, I mean, you a lot, nobody's hopefully in his case, he's thinking that nobody's going to be around to hear it, which in this case, where it happened, somebody was witnessing it. They called 911. Kind of walk us through the day everything happened for you. What you was on your mind. You said you were going to Jason Aldean. I actually just seen him last week in Charleston, as a matter of fact.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Was he great?
He was great. He rocked it out. I was like really nervous because we got there and it was Mitchell Tenpenny, I think, come on before him. and Jason was set to come on, and they told everybody to like leave their seats and seek shelter. That they had a thunderstorm warning, and I was just like, wasn't even really cloudy, and I'm just like, this is part of the show, he's something they're gonna do to, come out. It's just an act, but they were serious. And so it got delayed like 30 minutes. And then finally he did come out and, he was able to play and he put on a hell of a show. He's a great performer. I've already seen him like 3 times. But the thing about Jason is he puts out so many good songs that, by the time you see him again, there's all new stuff that you want to hear him sing live, but he's great.
Yeah, no, I got to meet him actually.
Really?
And his PR person set up a meet and greet for me with my PR person. And it was like really quick, but it was just really nice and cathartic. And you could tell like he's the man that respects his wife.
Right.
That is not like checking out other girls or anything like that. Like you could tell he was respectful to me. I was a good looking girl, but he was gonna like, thank you for coming. Okay, thanks,
Yeah.
And I like that.
Yeah. Yeah, so kind of walk us through the day of the attack.
So the day of the attack, I have a no-show for that appointment. And so that actually changes my schedule. And I go home from lunch and I get halfway ready for the show. Like I just put on my foundation, my blush and stuff. And then I go back to work so that I could feed the dogs and get out early so that I could leave early for the show so that I can literally get ready. And then I'm like, sweet, I don't have those clients, so I'm good. And I leave early and then I pull into my parking structure and well, the gate's broken and I complained about that the day before. And that's how he was able to get in. But he was parked in a parking spot and he was like backed up into the parking spot and he was fiddling with a tire iron and he was wearing a baseball cap. And I saw him, but I didn't connect the dots that it was him. Like I thought it was a homeless guy. And I don't know why I also wouldn't be like, why is that person fiddling with a tire iron? That's kind of weird. But my dog was barking at him. My mind was preoccupied for the Jason Aldean concert. And my dog was aggressively barking at him, but I just thought it was a homeless dude living out of his car.
Right.
So I told him to knock it off. He knocked it off. I got out of my car, grabbed my dog, and then John grabs me by the waist by my license plate, and I like parked right into the spot. And he looks me in the eye and says, "Do you remember me?" I didn't respond to him. I just tried to detach from him. I wasn't able to detach from him. I dropped my dog's leash so that my dog could run away and get away at least without me. And he kept trying to cover my mouth. I kept biting as hard as I could, and he wasn't able to cover my mouth at all, because it hurt him. And I remember putting up my purse and protecting my heart and some of my vital organs. And then I remember getting punched, or what I thought was punched. And then I was able to fall on my back and I landed like on my shoulder. My shoulder hit the ground first. And then I was kind of like, my feet were like up in a sense. So I was pedal kicking him.
Right.
And then he was on his knees on top of me and he was bringing down the knife. And before the knife was actually in a Del Taco bag. So I didn't know that he had a knife. And, so as the knife kept coming down on me, I kept on kicking his forearms and I was wearing rain boots because I came from my job as a kennel attendant too. And, as a dog groomer, and I just kept hitting it. And the knife actually fell out of his hand on my right hand side and fell in the ice pick position. So I picked up the knife and then I started just wailing on him. And it's funny too, because like if you ask me to pick up a knife now, I don't know if I'll do it correctly, but in that moment, like it was just like everything from The Walking Dead came through, and I picked up the knife how you're supposed to pick up the knife to like stab someone.
Right. So it don't
And
slide down your hand and wind up injuring you worse. Yeah.
oh yeah, and then from like Dexter, I knew to hold the knife tight so that it also wouldn't like backslide me and cut me
Right.
too, because Hannah McKay in one of the episodes, like that's how she has stitches, and
Yep.
that's how Dexter was able to find out she was a serial killer.
Yep.
So it's weird because you're not like really thinking about that whole storyline, but you're thinking you have to do it in that moment to make it happen. And then I actually held his head as I was stabbing him, and I was overthrowing and I was stabbing him. Now I can actually see it where I haven't been able to see it for the past 6 years. I thought I was actually stabbing him in the front of his chest, but I overthrew it and I got him in his shoulders. And then the last couple ones, I'm holding his head so he doesn't bite me like a zombie. And then I end up stabbing him in the forehead. And then the last one into the eye, because I knew that was the softest point of entry to the brain. And that would make him brain damage, or at least not be able to get up and Freddy Krueger me. So I take a step back, I take the knife, I toss it to the side so he, just in case he's not able to like just grab it right off the back. I
You pulled
start
it out once it went into the eye.
Oh yeah.
Oh, oh wow. Okay. Sorry, I just had to.
Yeah. No, it's okay. I like yeah, no, because I kept just going in and out. Yeah. Sorry, I'm like don't think about that too much, and that I'm like nervously laughing right now, which it's like I'm not I don't know what to say.
Well, no, I mean it's crazy that we're having this conversation, but it's like it's what people always hear the phrase, fight or flight, and
Yeah.
you're either going to run or you're going to fight. And it's like everything that you apparently had watched on TV and stuff to this point, it's crazy because these situations happen so fast. But at the same time, you don't realize how many thoughts run through your head as quick as they do. Like you said, all right, protect myself here. This is the softest point. Hold the knife like this. As
Yeah.
fast as it goes by, you do have moments of recollection that just are just like flashes. And those are what you use. And it sounds like that's exactly what happened in your case.
Yeah, thank you. Well, and then I also worked with dogs, so I had a good core in a sense. And then I did yoga like a week prior, so I was building back my breath work in a sense. So I had really the breath control and then the core work to like stand up for myself. And then not to mention my rain boots, and then me watching all the Walking Dead, and even like SVU came in handy too, because every single episode that I ever watched of SVU where there was a survivor that survived, I realized the thing that they did in order to survive, they always fought back.
Yeah. Yeah. And they say like the survival rate, if you let somebody take you from, point of attack is
Yeah.
very slim after that. It's not very good odds because then they have the upper hand, they have the control, they can take you to where you want to. So after this, you throw the knife away. What are you at that point realizing that you yourself have been stabbed? Because you were stabbed, correct? You thought they were punches, but they were actually stab wounds.
Yeah, so I look at my body to assess the situation. I notice that there's a 1-inch stab wound in my forearm. I start applying pressure to that to slow down the bleeding. And I look around, and then this my dog is eating the Del Taco. I'm scared that that's going to be poison. And that is the moment that a lady walked up with her yellow lab, asking me, "What can I do to help you?" I told her, "Can you please just grab my dog?" I'm okay, but can you grab my dog?
So your dog
And
was eating the taco after all this is taking place? There was a
yes,
taco in the bag, a taco in the knife he was using.
because if you're well, and I was thinking it could be poison because
Right.
my dog's always with me, but so why my dog did that is because he just went through all his like automatic nervous system, his nervous
Right.
system acted up and put him into fight mode, and so his body was like coming down, and his response was to eat a lot of food so he has more energy to maybe fight more.
Right. Wow.
So, I didn't quite understand that at the time, but now I do because I've worked so much with trauma.
You've been able to
And
process a lot more after the fact.
yeah, yeah. And that dog is no longer with me, but he was amazing and I'm forever thankful for him. But yeah, I just started to assess the situation. Then other people started coming up, and this guy with dreads came down. He was on a bicycle. He gave me his sweater. And then that's when Skylar, the 14-year-old lifeguard, came down. And then she just told me, I'm trained to handle the situation. My name's Skylar. What's your name? Asked me my birthday. We actually had the same birthday. And I kept repeating over and over again, that was my stepdad. He tried to kill me. That was my stepdad. He tried to kill me, so that people would know that was the case
Mhm.
and they wouldn't go up to him. But then the guy with dreads went up to give him CPR. I started freaking out, and then I needed to get away from him because I can't stop him from giving him CPR, but I can protect myself.
Right.
And I warned him. So I mean, if someone was warning you saying that guy just tried to kill me, I don't know if I would give him CPR, but um I'm thankful for that because it gave someone else the choice to actually take his life.
Right. Yeah, I see what you're saying. And that kind of like resembles, if you watch and it sounds like you're a fan of horror movies. If you watch the newest trilogy of the Halloween where they redid the Halloweens at the end of
I
part
actually
one.
haven't seen it yet.
Really? None of them?
Yes. Well, I've seen the original Halloween,
Well, like
but I
the
haven't seen
remakes
the
that they done the last probably 5 years that Danny McBride.
Okay.
So it's not really spoiling anything because there's three of them. So obviously he didn't die.
Yeah.
But she basically sets a trap in a house where she knows he's going to come after her. Once he does, he's trapped in the house. They set the house on fire. So, and then they leave. So that's how it goes off. They're riding in a truck and the camera just kind of pans.
Yes.
Well, part two picks up. They're in the truck and they see the fire trucks going. And she's just like screaming, like, no, let him burn, let him burn. I'm sure in that moment you're thinking, no, don't get on him. Don't do CPR. Let him fucking die. I mean, he just tried to kill me.
Oh yeah, but I'm like, in that moment, if he did try to kill them, like, I mean, I warned them.
Right.
And I think that I was his main goal. So I was like, okay, he wouldn't get up and just like stab that guy. I think he would get up and be like, where's Tara? I gotta get her.
Right. And I mean, obviously, we're talking about him in the past tense, so that'll just give the context clues that John is definitely no longer around. But did he live through that and die later at the hospital? What was the situation like with his outcome after that?
So when the guy gave him CPR, that revived him, but he was still brain dead.
Uh,
Yes. And so they did all the things they needed to do to him, brought him to global over here. And then they gave him stitches and stuff, which I'm like, why waste medical resources? Why do that? But I mean, I guess it's protocol and you have to. But he had stitches from my dog.
I hate to look at it from a money aspect too, but sometimes if they have insurance, they can do all that and then bill the insurance for it.
Oh, and he had Kaiser.
Yeah. So that's if they knew that going in, they can, even though they know his outcome is not good, they can do all this other shit and you know just
Yeah, because he didn't have brain activity. And then it's crazy because my mom ended up making friends with his sister during this time, his two sisters.
Mhm.
And then there was a cousin that also came out, and the cousin actually had a close relationship with him. And I think everybody was trying to digest this, but the two sisters were living in fear from him and had restraining orders against him and everything. And I thought it was really nice that they brought me flowers too. But we thought that they should have that right to call his time a death.
Right.
And one of his sisters is also a nurse. So she had the medical knowledge as well. So, we gave her that right to call that. And it was really weird too, because I was also on this one show, Jubilee. It's an interesting title, and I think you might be interested in it as well, because I got to meet a lot of people that have taken lives. And one of the people on that show, they take lives for like hospice. And they were telling me that a lot of people's moments of their final like moments is, and when they actually go, is someone actually telling them it's okay to go.
I believe that. I believe that.
Yeah.
I remember my grandfather passed away, and my grandmother had passed away probably 5 or 6 years prior to that with cancer. And we knew it was getting bad and towards the end. And we're laying there in the living room. He's in the hospital bed and he's pointing up to the corner. And we called her Mamaws, from the South. We have those slang terms for the grandparents. And he points up to the corner and he's like, I see Mamaw right there. And like literally minutes after that, he was no longer with us. So I believe that 100%.
Yeah. So my mom actually told him like it's okay to go now, and like put her hand on his head, and that's when he went.
Wow.
Right? And I think, I don't think that these types of people are able to love, but I do think that he had a deep connection with her.
Yeah.
And that when he didn't get his way with her, that's when he lost it. Well, he did,
Yeah.
but like I think that she had some sort of tie over him. Like, maybe she was the one that didn't give him what he wanted, or maybe she was the one that he thought would give her what he wanted. I don't really know. There's so much I don't know, but I think that it was really interesting that that energy moment was like when he went.
Yeah, there's something to it. And it sounds like too, like you said, a lot of the women he would get to the point whether he married or whatever, and he would basically, all right, well, if you want this over, he would extort them to a certain extent. And
Oh
so
yeah.
luckily it never got to that point. But because your mom did decide to leave and did fight back and didn't go along with everything like everybody else did, it could have become that, the one thing he couldn't have that he longed for, something along those lines. So I get that 100%. How was your mom on this? I mean, obviously it is a man that she cares for regardless of the situation, but then he's trying to attack you. How did your mom feel? What was your feelings, after all this taking place? Because I know immediately after, your adrenaline's pumping, your heart's 90 miles an hour, but then slowly things start to kind of settle down and you have to deal with what's at hand. What were those steps like?
So after I came down the hill, I actually grabbed my phone. Well, I had Skylar grab my phone, and I called my mom and I told her, I'm so sorry. I think I killed your husband. I knew he would do this. So I was very empathetic towards her, and I just felt like, oh my gosh, she's going to have to even mourn his death. And I don't want her to feel that hurt, because I was with someone that was toxic, very toxic. And, there's that tie to them. And even though they've abused you, hurt you, you still, a part of you loves them.
Yeah.
And, even Emily and Abigail, like that was their biological father. Like they have to mourn that. Anyone has to mourn anything. But how I had that certain relationship that was also abusive and stuff, that person actually passed the same day as my dog that was in my attack with me, Cash. And I got a different sense of how John's victims might have felt when he died.
Right.
And I hate to say this, but I was relieved.
Yeah, I get that. And a lot of people deal with things differently. A lot of people have a preconceived notion of how they may deal with things. And then when it actually happens, it's something totally different. Much like even like the situation with you getting attacked. Some people might think, oh, if that happened, I'd just panic, but It's not always the case. Sometimes you're a lot stronger than you realize, because when it's in a situation to where it's you or them and you realize literally your life is on the line, you don't really know what you're capable of, because fortunately those aren't situations you can just go place yourself in all willy-nilly. It happens, and when it happens, then you have to see what's, how it's going to play out. And like I said, it's usually in that case fight or flight, and you definitely fought. You fought like hell and you won. um what has the journey been like from then to now? Did you have any sort of survivor's guilt for it? Did you, struggle? Were there nightmares? What was kind of like the after effect? Because I think that's something that, you guys kind of highlight in your podcast. People cover everything to the story, but then it's like the story, then it's over. You don't realize that the survivor then has to live with all that other stuff, all the what ifs, the different scenarios. What if I'd have done this? What if this hadn't happened? You're constantly playing those things in your head. What was, that like for you, that process?
It was really hard to navigate because everybody saw me as tainted, or, it's crazy because some friends didn't even believe me. And so they were like, wow, Tara's just like making stuff up. And it's crazy because my family always had the craziest stories. Everyone was like, is that true? Is it not true? Our family was just the type of family that like we should like been told by so many friends, your family should have a reality TV show.
Right.
And so it was hard for people to believe me at first, not because I wasn't a truthful person. It was literally because I just had so many crazy stories.
Right. And it's a good thing that the lady that come down with the lab, was she actually seen this attack taking place once it started? Is that accurate?
I think she came at like the very, very tail end.
Okay.
But then there was, so the parking garage was the upper parking garage, and there was so many balconies overlooking it. So it was like three floors of balconies, and then there was like, it was a huge complex. So there was at least 30 balconies that could like see directly into the line of view.
Because somebody called 911 and said, I can see a girl being stabbed. And that was like, and as crazy as it sounds, like that was probably beneficial,
Oh
because
yeah.
had this been an enclosed parking garage with no security system or whatever, even though you were attacked, if nobody's there to verify the story, then it becomes a whole different situation to where they could essentially arrest you until they figure out what's going on. Like there's a lot of ways that could have went real bad. So the fact that somebody was able to, at least catch this and verify your story was huge, because even with all this backstory, even with people knowing him, they're the wrong cop, the wrong training. This could have went real bad. I know a thing or two about it. So you're lucky
Yeah.
in that aspect.
Thank you. Yeah, no, and I am very thankful for that aspect in a sense too. Um, and I believe there was around like 20 witnesses or something like that.
Oh, that's good then. You're good on that.
So
Did you
so
have any thought that they may arrest you for this? Did that even enter your mind?
not for a while, to be honest. There was probably like a week or two that went by, and then I still hadn't gotten back my phone. And I'm like, why haven't I gotten back my phone? And
Yeah. Well,
it's
as you
funny.
probably learned by now, it's because the wheels of anything, investigation, justice, whatever, move very, very slowly.
Well, and it's funny too because all our devices with Apple are linked to each other.
Right.
So I have my computer. I was typing from my computer and I'm like just thinking in my head, like, I wonder what they're seeing come through. I wonder and I mean, every single time someone I would just like told them the story and people were like, what the fuck, is she on some drugs or something? And I think they were like, oh wow, okay, she's telling everyone, so
Yeah.
she's processing it.
Yeah. And that's part of it. Believe it or not, telling the story is cathartic. It is a therapy session and a way to get it out. Um, how long after this were you contacted about, the podcast being put together?
Probably like 6 months.
So fairly quickly.
Yeah, like I went through a lot of healing. Like I went through a place where I didn't want to be alone, so I would just go party a lot.
That's understandable.
I yeah, I mean I would drink a lot some nights, but then there would also be nights where I'd go out and just not drink because I just wanted to be around people because I was so scared to be alone.
Yeah, I get that.
And yeah. And I like even in the hospital, I kept thinking like one of John's friends are gonna come after me. And I had to do a lot of research and I found out he didn't really have friends.
Well, that's a good thing. And I can totally see to where those are those things where after it's all over, you start thinking, about worst case scenarios and this, that, and the other. So I can see where all that would creep up on you. Did you have any reservations about the podcast being done? Were you for it? Were you against it? Was it, a reliving it of sorts? Obviously it was, but I mean, were you to the point, I guess, where that was beneficial?
I didn't even know it was going to be a podcast.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I did the interviews with Christopher Gothard and we thought it was going to be a series of articles. Like there was another thing he covered where like the parents like put drugs in the car or something and like a PTA mom and stuff. It was a huge story though. And so he was like we thought it was just going to be like that. And about a week or two prior, he comes to us and he's like, we're going to make it into a podcast. And we're thinking a podcast is kind of like a church sermon because we're used to going to our church and then them putting out podcasts like that. And we don't even like listen to that because we're not to that technology level yet. So yeah, it got made and we didn't really know. And then it blew up in a sense.
Yes, it definitely did blow up. Did you listen to podcasts at that time? Really? I mean, not really.
I did actually because I wanted to know what it was about and I wanted to listen. And, I worked in the entertainment industry right before that.
Mhm.
I was not really doing like my my ex-boyfriend, he worked as like a PA and sometimes an AD and like he wanted to get into a DP. So
These are all professions, folks. I promise you.
yes, and I just laugh because I'm
Right in
like, oh,
photography.
my boyfriend now is a DP, so it works out. I don't have a type.
I'm sensing a little bit there.
Yeah, but it was I thought it was great because it's like something being made.
Right.
You know how hard it is to get stuff made.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And Wondery, I mean, that's a huge platform for anybody that, is a podcast listener. Wondery, is top notch when it comes to their product and what they put out. And it was just one of those things that could put you there. I've always found that when I started listening to a lot of podcasts, the really good ones, it's like a movie that you listen to. And
Oh
before that,
yeah.
sometimes it's hard to keep attention, but the way they do it, the background music, the way they were kind of chopping up the interviews, it kept you engaged. Um, what about when you found out it was going to be a Netflix show? How did that ring up there?
Okay, so this is where they get me too, because we did a live show with the LA Times, and then a certain amount of the proceeds were also donated for victims of domestic violence. So we were like, okay, a lot of cool stuff's going on here. And then at the show, Christopher Gothard's like, I want to introduce you to my friend Richard Suckle. He produced Suicide Squad. And I'm like, I love Harley Quinn so much.
Yeah,
I'm a comic book reader.
Margot Robbie.
Uh-huh. And it's so funny. She's actually Margot Robbie is a year older than me and 1 day.
Really?
Uh-huh.
Well, she's making a killing right now with the Barbie movie for sure.
Right? So I was like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, I want you to produce my show.
Did you have any input as far as casting or anything like that when it goes, or was that kind of out of your hands?
I think I had more input than I did because I've worked on sets before. And my boyfriend worked on sets and then I knew all the cast and crew. So everyone kind of gave me special treatment then.
Right.
But this is different. This is like they're not thinking like this is like what I normally do. They're thinking like, oh, okay, she is not used to this. And also they also wanted to keep us separate a little bit because of the actors.
Right.
Not because they think we would fangirl over them or anything, because we would make the actors nervous. Actresses and stuff, yeah.
Really? Is it because they
Uh-huh.
were, just portraying you? So it was kind of
So
okay.
there's a lot of pressure, you
I
know?
can see that. I can see that. Well, I love Connie Britt, man. I've been a fan of Connie Britt since like the Friday Night Lights movie, TV shows, even the first American Horror Story season that she was in. I was a big fan of Nashville when it was on. I mean, I love Connie Britt. So I think she absolutely nailed, I mean, I don't personally know your mom, but I think just from what I hear, the type of woman that she was, the way Connie played her, it seems like she nailed that one. Was Eric Bana pretty close to what John Meehan was like?
100% where I actually had to go to therapy because it re-triggered me and I had to separate that they were different.
Wow. So he
But yeah.
he was really spot on with the character then.
Yeah, but I got to go to set a few times, and it was funny because his request was he didn't wanna meet me until after everything because he has to, like, try to kill me in the show, you know? And I met him the very last day we were filming, and I was in the trailer, and I've, worked background several times, that's more so what I would do on set, and so I've been taught, "Can't talk to the actors."
Mhm.
And so it's funny because he actually like came up to me. He was really nice. And then I got to meet him again at the premiere. We said hello because we already like knew each other. Such a nice man. And my dog was obsessed with him. Like my dog was just like sitting on his feet, like looking up at him, getting scratches. And so I was like, "Oh, yeah, no, you are way different from John because Cash did not have that reaction
Yeah.
towards him."
Well, he's an actor honing that, role to play. I think dogs, I really do believe have a sense of good people and bad people. And Eric seems like a real, down to earth guy. I love that movie that he was in where he played that cop chasing around I guess you could call it Ghost or whatever. I think it was The Evil Within or something like that. Did you ever see that
Okay.
one? It's really good. It's like he's chasing like basically a demonic ghost that's hopping around. It's really good. It's one of my favorites.
Okay, I'll have to check it out. I just remember him from Funny People,
Yeah.
and then also Troy.
Yeah, Troy. Eric Bana kicking ass.
Yes.
What about the girl that played you, Julia Garner?
Oh, yeah, I love Julia. Julia's really sweet, nice. Julia is just a busy girl. So, it was hard to, like, meet up and connect with her because like, she was working Ozark and, then she would come back for a few days to LA to film Dirty John, and then she was also, I think, during that time, in a relationship or starting a relationship with Mark Foster from Foster the People, and now they're married and stuff and have a cute bulldog and just, I think happy.
So overall, I mean, were you pretty happy with the production of the Netflix thing?
100% with the production and everything. I mean, I wish I could have gone on set and like did my one liner.
Right.
Um, I was promised that in a sense, but I think they had me in my scene and then they realized that was bad. And that's what I heard, but I'm not 100% sure.
Well, and we've kind of alluded to it throughout this interview, but you actually started your own podcast after this. Tell everybody kind of a brief overview of what it's about, because it's a very interesting concept. And where they can find it to go check you guys out. And I'm looking forward to meeting you guys too down there in CrimeCon. I'm going to be down there as well.
Oh yes, I might have an idea, but our podcast is the Survivor Squad podcast. It is about where we interview different survivors about their story and their resilience, and just having conversations. And sometimes you get to kind of hear their full story, just depending on where they're at in life. Some stories, like say the OJ Simpson story, has been majorly talked about, so we didn't want to rehash it with Kim Goldman, and we just talked about more so how the media affected her.
Right.
Where say we have on Eric Carter Landon, he goes through and shares the story of his baby brother being murdered by his mom's boyfriend. So, it's a little bit of different, and we try to mix it up so that you guys, the listeners, aren't really getting restless. Like, they're like, oh, this isn't too much sexual assault in a row.
Right.
There's a mixture of the crimes.
Yeah. And that's what I try to do too. It's crime and entertainment. So I have a survivor for something, on one podcast, maybe some prolific drug smuggler on another one, then an actor, then a singer, or, it just kind of bounces all over the block. Cause like you said, it just keeps the listeners engaged. And I think that's really cool. The idea that, you kind of pick up in y'all's podcast from where most people stop paying attention, because it's like with anything in life, whether it's, a death or anything like that, it's all about what happens after the fact. Everybody's there when everything happens, but then ultimately it's you just left to deal with all the after effects of this. And that's when people have kind of gone back to their normal lives, because, okay, they heard the story, they found out the details, they're back and moved on, but you're still dealing with the trauma. And I think that's very cool that you guys kind of highlight that, because a lot of times that's where the interest stops for most people. Once they figure out the dirt, I guess, if you will, their interest stops. But it's the survivor that has to carry on and live with that, and figure out the best way possible to go back to a normal style life. And like you said, I mean, it's hard. It's, you figure out ways to mask it, ways to bury it, ways to get around it, but it's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what we're both doing, is like moving forward with the aftermath that we've had to deal with.
Well, I've listened to a few of y'all's podcasts. I'm a big fan. I actually went and stole one of your guests. I had Ashley Hoff on not too long ago, and
I
her
love that.
story just got nominated, or a documentary just got nominated for an Emmy.
Yes, 11 minutes.
Yes, 11 minutes. Fantastic documentary. So that's a cool thing about these podcasts. When you start networking, you meet other people with interesting stories. And, I've got to have you on now. Hopefully I'll get Collier on soon. I mean, it's just great that we're able to kind of get together and brand and share these stories. Where all is y'all's podcast available? All the normal platforms, YouTube,
Yes,
Spotify, Apple?
all the normal platforms. On YouTube, though, currently we only have our teasers on there, so don't get too excited to see the full episode. If you want the full episode, though, we always have them on our Patreon.
Yep. Patreon. You can go check that out. What about socials for yourself for the podcast?
So you can check out Survivor Squad anywhere. We're on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, and that's just Survivor Squad. It's kind of different everywhere, but you'll find us. And then on everywhere else, I am Terra Newell, TerraNewell.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. This was a fantastic episode. Please go check out the Dirty John podcast. I feel like I'm way late to the game on that. Most people probably already have. If you haven't, go check that out. Check out the Netflix show. Check out this podcast, because I've thoroughly enjoyed it. And then go check out Survivor Squad. Terra, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming on the show and telling your story.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I am Hollywood Wade. That was Terra Newell, and unfortunately, we are out of time. Tune in next week for an all-new episode of Crime and Entertainment. Terra, we appreciate it.
Thank you.